Welcome to That's Joy, the podcast. I'm your host, Cece Calbanero, and I'll be sharing stories of miracles, God moments, and unpacking the truth behind what joy truly means. My friend, when God gives you a direct call on your life, be sure to answer it. Here's to answering my call together. Hello, sweet friends. Welcome back to That's Joy, the podcast. I'm your host, Cece, and I am so grateful to be sitting here today. Friends, if you are new around here, welcome. I'm so glad of all the podcasts in the land, you chose to click play on this one. I know that it's going to meet you right where you're at because God's just that good. He works in such unique ways, and I can't even tell you how many stories that listeners just like you have reported in and have told me how a certain episode has just reached them right when they needed it. And so if you are one of those people that has shared that with me, thank you. You are literally the gas in my engine. Like, you keep me going in all of the ways. And man, I'm so grateful to be here today because it's been a minute. If you are consistent around here, you may be wondering, what is going on? Cece has not posted in 3 weeks. Yeah, I know. It's been 3 weeks since my episode, and this episode is titled, How Do You Show Up When You Don't Feel Like It? And also, the second part of that is, what do you do when you haven't shown up? And I think that I wanted to, instead of kick off this episode with the travel episode that I want to do, I just went traveling with my mom to Europe a week and a half ago, and I want to share that entire story, but I think it deserves a solo episode of itself. And so we'll keep that for next week. But I don't want to move too quick, and I definitely want to kick off every episode of That's Joy like we do every single time, and that's with a little joyful noise. Joyful noise is our version of good news. What are the good things that are happening in the world? How do we highlight more of that? And man, my joyful noise today is simple. My social cup is overflowing. Over the last several weeks, I've been able to have social community encounters and just living in community in a way that I have not for months. And I am so grateful for each of the memories, each of the trips, and all of the ways that God was moving in a way that I almost became unfamiliar with. And I'll unpack that a bit later too. But that's my joyful noise. At the top of April, I got to travel for my birthday for about, I think we were in California, my husband and I, for 12 days total, a little bit in Southern California, which we love so much, and then headed up to the Bay Area where my family, my giant Filipino family, is all at. And so we were able to do both there. And then the third week of April, I had the opportunity to go on a work trip to Denver. So I was there for 4 days. And then most recently, you've probably seen, if you follow me on social, that I have been beep bopping all over Europe with just my mom and her childhood best friend for about 12 days from May to May 1st to May 9th. But before and after that, we spent time in California again. And so we've been all over. And I have been all over. And I know that, man, diving into this episode, I wanted to share why in the middle of my travel, I've been a bit MIA. And typically during my traveling seasons, if you've been hanging out here for a while, I mean, gosh, we started the podcast back in 2020, which is crazy. If you're new, I started this podcast originally with my best friend, and it was actually titled The Glow Theory Podcast. If you are an OG who has been listening since 2020, I want to give you a hug through this screen, through this mic, and say thank you for just being a rock star who has rolled with me. But, man, I've been doing this since 2020, and there's moments where I've traveled a ton, but still put episodes out. So maybe you're like, wait, Cece, you've traveled before, and are you good? Like, are you good? Because typically when people go silent, or people create distance, it's because they may be going through something that's not necessarily good. I know, speaking from experience, I have those tendencies that I am working on, where I still do that too. And so if that's you, I just want you to know that I see you and I hear you. But by the grace of God, I just am so grateful that that isn't necessarily the case as to why I've been a bit MIA. Friends, I haven't shared this on social, and I haven't shared it anywhere yet, but on April 1st, I started a full-time job. I know it sounds so wild because for months I have shared that I've kind of been on the road of entrepreneurship, taking on social media clients by day, and then also doing podcast and my own personal social endeavors by night and by weekends. And some seasons have looked like I had a slew of upwards to 5 clients at a time. And other seasons, I sat at just 1 client at a time. And so, as you know, with every entrepreneur, there are peaks and there are valleys. And as I was praying over this year, I mean, I've shared with y'all, my word for the year is wonder. Like, God, I just want to be in awe and wonder of what you're doing and catch you and see you in ways that I haven't seen you move before. And so I think that it's just no coincidence that when you choose a word of the year, prepare your heart and your mind to encounter that word in a way that you don't picture it. Because that's just God. We have our plans, we have our pictures, and then He has His. And oftentimes it's not completely aligned in the best way. Hear me when I say that, in the best way. I cannot tell you how many times I've had a picture for my life and God revamped that canvas and made it even better. It was actually better than what I pictured. And so me accepting this full-time job, friends, it has been better than what I pictured. And I say that just because I'm so grateful for this job opportunity. I know that some of y'all will be curious. So I am working alongside Amy Porterfield and Team Porterfield, and I feel so grateful to be surrounded by so many people who are crushing it at their roles. And what I shared after several encounters with the team was that I just feel like I'm in a room of people, virtual rooms, because it's a remote role, but virtual rooms that where I'm not the smartest person in the room, and I love that. There's that famous quote that says, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I just believe that to be true, especially my growth-driven heart. Like I constantly want to be learning, and learning from others is one of the best ways that you can learn when you're rubbing shoulders with people who are further along in different races than you, because I think there's so much wisdom that you're able to run with by simply just being in that room. And so I've found myself in a place like that again, and I'm so immensely grateful. So grateful. And with that, it has just meant that my time has kind of shifted a bit, and I've had to kind of do this. I'm moving my hands in a somewhat circle where I'm like trying to juggle a little bit. Like I'm finding my dance, I'm finding my groove again. And that's not always easy. I think that we forget, especially as like high achievers. I feel like there's a lot of people who listen to That's Joy. You just are wired to achieve greatness. And I know that because I see so many of your guys' messages. I think that we are alike in a lot of ways. And with the full-time job, there's just so much time that has now been placed in a certain area. And that's just the truth of the matter. And friends, in full transparency, I feel like of all places that I show up on the internet and online, that my podcast is the place where I'm most authentic. And you know that. I leave it all out, you know? I don't air out my dirty laundry, but I want to make sure that I'm open and honest with you guys, because I don't want you to ever look at my life and think that it's one way, and not have you know all angles of what it actually is like. And truth be told, having a full-time job, it just means your hours that you once had are now allocated in a new space. And so for me, I didn't necessarily know or have on my bingo card at the beginning of 2024 that I would be in a full-time role. I was exploring, and I've always had my eyes open. If the right opportunity came along, that I would be open to exploring what that would look like. But I knew that for me, for my husband and our small little family of 2, that stability right now and that knowing of how much income is coming in is something that I crave most. And there's the other factors of having a full-time job, which is the not so fun stuff like insurance and benefits and all of that greatness, right? And then the consistency, like all of that is just also comes along with the full-time job and structure. And those are all things that I was craving in this season, being married only 4.5 to 5 months. And so I'm so grateful that this opportunity kind of did fall into my lap. I say that and I almost don't want to say fall into my lap, because I think a lot of people will hear that and think, oh, it just came to you, so if I just sit, it'll just come to me. That's not the case. I've been prayerful about stepping into a new season and that God would meet me financially with the things that are on my heart, and all of those things were met and then some, and it wasn't necessarily exactly how I pictured. And so I think that there's that importance that you need to differentiate for your own life, right? Like we have to have those moments with ourselves. And I have just so much newness that I'm stepping into. And so, how does that even tie into the episode title? You might be thinking, Cece, well, how do you show up when you don't feel like it? Friends, with time being reallocated in one space, so do your brain efforts, so does your motivation, and so does your capacity of what you have to give then gets poured in a different direction. And I'm so grateful, because I know that the new pour is going to breed like a new wine. I always love that verse, and I love that song so much. Y'all know that. I love the song New Wine, and I think that the Lord has shed an old wineskin, and I'm stepping into a new wineskin in this season. But with that also being said, I think that I have been pouring in a new direction that I haven't had a lot to give here on That's Joy. And that's why I missed 3 weeks of the episodes. And I'm not proud of that at all, because I think that I pride myself in showing up when you don't feel like it. But I think that as I say that, and as you clicked play on this episode, you might be looking for an answer as to why and how you should do that. And I hope to give you the tools at the very end of this episode of things that I'm going to be doing to show up again. But sometimes, friends, there's a point where there's the in between. And I want to talk about that in between for a second, because I think that whatever it is that you're not showing up in, whether it be a weekly podcast episode, or you committing to writing to finish that book, or you applying to jobs to actually get the job, or you going to the gym but not going to the gym, or you trying to eat healthy but then not actually eating healthy, and there's that gap of where you currently are and where you say you want to be, and you're sitting somewhere in the middle. Some of y'all are closer to the beginning part where you're like, that feels so far, I don't know when I'm going to show up again. And then others of you are further along in that little gap where you're thinking, you know what, starting on this coming Monday, starting today, I'm going to do it, right? There's a gap. There's a gap that we get, and sometimes we don't know how long that gap really is. And so for me, the creative, the creative engine that I needed to pour into that joy was not available for 3 weeks. But here's the thing. It could have not been available for 5 more weeks, for 6 more weeks, for 8 more weeks. It could have, right? Nobody's twisting my arm and making me show up here. It's all me just trying my best to listen to my intuition and to what God is nudging me to do. And sometimes I do that gracefully, and sometimes I do that oh so imperfectly. But I had this moment while I was in the bathroom getting ready for this show, and I remembered my laundry. How many of y'all have left laundry in the washer only to come to find that 2 days later you forgot to transfer it to the dryer, so then you got to wash it again? I had this revelation. I know it sounds so funny and so elementary, but I had this tiny revelation where I thought, man, a good thing can quickly turn into a bad thing if it stays there for too long. Hear me out. That laundry, that washer, right, is created to wash the laundry so that I can end up with clean clothes. And if I don't act and show up correctly, then that good thing that was once designed to be a good thing, a tool for us, can then so quickly become into a bad thing as that smell and odor spreads throughout my apartment, and that smell and odor then builds up. If I had left it even longer than 2 days, imagine if it sat there for 2 months. It might be growing some mold up in there, right? And that is not good for our health by any means. But it started as a good thing. But if it stayed there for too long and didn't walk closer towards its purpose with going to the dryer, I know this sounds so funny, but go with me for a second. How many of us have stayed in the washer longer than we needed to be? I know that for me, these past 3 weeks have been wild. And so there's a grace over that, right? I think that you know that there's grace when there's peace. And that's the difference. Over these last 3 weeks where I haven't published and put out an episode, I know that there was a grace over me because I was traveling. I was on the road. I was juggling work and side things and not producing a podcast while on the road. There's a grace over that, right? Because the truth of the matter is, I don't vacation like that all the time. Maybe once a year do I do a trip that grand, right? And so I wanted my best to focus on that moment because I'm not going to get that moment. I'm not called to that trip to be productive. I'm called to be present where my feet are and present with whoever who's in front of me. And that happened to be my mom. And I'm so grateful that I got to do that. The week before that was a work trip. I got to meet new coworkers and explore a new city. And I'm so grateful that the Lord had me in front of those people and I got to be present with those people. And at the beginning of April, I got to be present with my husband and go all over California and celebrate my birthday and be so present where my feet were. And so my feet weren't right here pressing record. But when I got back, I had an opportunity. I said, should I go one more week without publishing? And there was a stirring in me that said, no, you sit down and you record and you show up. And if I'm being completely honest with myself, while I was drafting up the notes, y'all, I didn't know entirely, I haven't done it in a beat. Right? When you don't do something for a while, you gotta warm yourself up back into it. And the enemy can get in your head in that in between and say, you don't have anything to say. Nobody's gonna listen to you. Why are you even showing up? But that's a lie. All of those things are a lie from the pit of hell. They could get underneath your feet, okay? If there is one person who is greatly impacted by this podcast and by this episode, then I am grateful, and it has to be enough. It has to be enough. So whatever it is that you're trying to show up in, you got to remember that. How do we refocus and realign to the one? There's that juggle, friends, and there's that fine in between where if you're resting, that's okay. Make sure you're praying and asking God for peace over that rest. If the peace is no longer there, you gotta draw closer to Him and ask Him where it is He wants you to go, because He will show you, He will guide you. You will feel those little nudges in your heart to click play again. Whatever that is for you. To click play over that thing in your life. The result of being busy in a new way has just meant my routine has looked a lot different, I haven't gotten up in the mornings and had my quiet time in the way that I usually do right here when I'm home. I haven't had as much time to dive into the Bible and to read the word as much as I would like to than when I'm traveling and go. And my meals, I've been indulging and eating things that I don't typically eat to fuel and feel my best because I was on trips, once in a lifetime type of trips, and I wanted to enjoy and have that flexibility, right? And that all of those things have amounted to me feeling filled socially, like I shared at the top of the episode. Man, my joyful noise is that. Praise God that it gets to be that. So many people pray for opportunities and trips and moments like that. And so I never want to take that for granted and have that revert back to me being in a place of shame. Friends, me speaking right now isn't me shaming myself because I didn't published 3 episodes in the last 3 weeks and I haven't cleaned and I haven't done my quiet time and journaled like I used to. I'm not shaming myself. I'm not shaming myself at all. I feel like there is a grace over that. Could I have done things a little bit differently? Maybe. But thank God for God's grace and mercy, right? There is a new day and I know that I couldn't miss another week. And so that's why I pressed record. And there's that knowing for you too. There's that knowing of knowing what you should do, but you're not. I want to stir that feeling, that spirit, whatever it is that is coming up for you, and invite you to lean in with me. Okay, lean in with me. And so I know that if I kept eating croissants every single day, chocolate croissants at that, for the next 2 months until my next trip, I know that I would not be honoring God, nor listening to my body, nor listening to the nudges of the Holy Spirit, because that is not what He's telling me to do at all. I do feel a nudge to step back into the habits and the things that make me feel my best and the things that allow me to show up as the best version of Cece. I feel that. I feel like I'm ready and I feel like I want to fuel and feel my best again. Again, if you follow me on social, you know that I'm doing that again with my workouts. I showed up to 2 classes this week and have been here for 4 days, and it feels good to be back, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. My goodness, is it hard? But it's transferring that hard and saying, I'm gonna do it anyway. And so that's the point of this episode, is that I'm going to now show up even though I don't completely feel like it. Again, you and only you can be the judge of what that is. I'm not telling you to pick up your bootstraps and fight through seasons of depression and anxiety and hard things like that. Don't get my message confused. I'm telling the person, this may or may not be you, the person who feels like they know that they're ready, but they're not doing it anyway. Okay? There is that difference there. And so what I am going to be doing is that I am going to be, for the next 40 days, committing to dialing it in. I looked it up, and until my next trip, I have 40 days. And so I'm like, all right, Cece, I love a mini challenge around here. If you know me, you know that I love challenging myself. And I think that I love mini sprints too. There's something about having that goal and that carrot right there and saying, all right, let me try my best to get there with everything that I got. Imperfectly falling forward. That's all we get to do in this life, is imperfectly fall forward. So let's do it together, right? I want to invite you, if any of this that I share creates a nudge on your heart where you're like, you know what, Cece, I haven't been the most dialed and the best, I guess you can say, when it comes to fueling and feeling my best. And so if that's you, I want to invite you to do this with me, and I'll have some action items at the end, but here's a few of the things that I'm going to be doing to show up even though I don't feel like it. And it's 1, waking up the same time every day. I want to do that because I know that when I do that, it catapults me into a direction of feeling good. But in order to do that, I have to make sure that, what do I say? Your morning routine starts at night. I have to make sure that I'm going to bed at a good time in order for me to wake up at that specific time every single day. By the way, I'll do it imperfectly. There'll be a day I oversleep. There will be some days where the Lord has done this in the past, has woken me up far before my alarm, and I'm ready to go. It's wild. I don't understand it, but I'm grateful for it. And so I know that that's something that's going to help me. I'm going to read my Bible and journal again. I need to get back to it daily. It's something that I have not done for weeks and I want to get back into. Another thing is my workouts. I want to be consistent and hit that 6 times a week mark. Another thing I'm going to do is eat clean and fuel my body correctly. And I'm not an expert at this. I'm not a nutrition coach, but hey, I know one. He happens to be my husband. And so he's actually going to help me create my macros to a place where it will help allow me to get closer and closer to my goals in 40 days and my goals for the remainder of the year when it comes to fitness and health. And what I mean by that, I know some people might hear the word macros and be like, what are you talking about? That's just a combination of how much protein versus carbs versus fats you should be eating daily. And again, invitations coming very soon if you want to have that kind of curated for yourself too. The next thing is I'm going to be drinking my water. I have a Stanley that my sweet husband bought me, and my goal is to drink minimum 3, target for 4 a day. I love putting Ultima electrolytes in there, and so that just helps me a ton. The next thing I'm going to do is get ahead on my personal pursuits. Right now, today, when I'm recording this, I will be recording 2, aiming for 3 episodes today. That way I'm just ahead, that there's no conflict with the other things that I get to do that comes in the way of what I know I want to do, which is this. And so getting ahead on my personal pursuits. And then I'm going to spend lots of quality time with my husband on the evenings where we do have a moment after dinner. I want to be intentional with walks and a game night and pickleball, and just remember to have fun alongside reinstalling these habits, because you get to, right? And then lastly, for these next 40 days, I want to nurture the relationships that I have in my community. On my flight back to Nashville, I felt so grateful that flying in, I was like, man, I just traveled to so many places around the world. Me and my mom got to see 3 countries. I'm going to share that on the next episode. But man, of all places, I'm flying back here. Why? We get to live anywhere. We get to do anything in this life, really. If you're listening to this episode, you're among the richest of the world. Of the world, y'all. And I remembered, man, this community that I've cultivated here is unlike any else. I have friends that people pray for, and I'm so grateful. And I never want to take that for granted. And so I want to nurture those relationships well. And so that is some of the ways that I'm going to show up when I don't feel like it. Because on that list that I just shared, there's going to be moments where I don't feel like reading my Bible, where I don't feel like journaling. But I'm committing right now, because I have a goal in mind, 40 days to my next trip, where I want to make sure that I'm redialing in these things. Because I know that when I do that, I will love how I feel. And that's the difference. Doing something you don't feel like it for the greater exchange of what's to come. Who's in? Are you in? Do you feel a little nudge on your heart? Friends, if you do, I would love, love, love to hear from you. I'm going to re-kick on my newsletter that I have not sent out in a while, so you have not missed one from me. If you have asked, I haven't been able to tackle that yet, and I want to, because I want to push out a weekly newsletter. So sign up in the show notes and I'll get that first one out. If you're interested in actually like having a set game plan, this isn't for anyone. This is just if you're serious and you want to like pay for a service that will help you kickstart your nutrition. If you want to get dialed and have specific macros for yourself too, similar to how I will be, then shoot me a DM. I want you to shoot me a DM that says, CC, let's go. Actually, what should it say? Yeah, let's put CC, let's go. Okay, write in CC Let's Go, and I'll know that you want to work with my husband, Jonathan, and myself to help you get to a place nutritionally. See, this is why I'm not a nutrition coach. But to get to a place where you are dialing it in. And friends, just to let you know, I've worked with a nutrition coach a year and a half ago for an entire year. And it kickstarted who I am today in a lot of ways because it helped me build that foundation of habits that I didn't have before. So if you're interested in that, like I said, it is going to be a cost because the service that my husband provides is his job, and there's a lot of value with this. He's not just going to give you your macros. There's so much more to it. But if you're interested at all, DM me on Instagram, CC Let's Go, and I want to put us all in a group chat, connect us all together, and see what makes sense, and if it's something that you want to get rolling too. But with all that being said, friends, I just hope, and I'm so grateful that you plugged in today, and I hope that it met you where you're at, that there's at least a piece of this episode, heck, 30 seconds at least, that have helped you and blessed you in some way. If there's a certain part of this episode that you want me to speak more into, I'd love to know what that is. Shoot me a text to 615-813-4813. You can join the Joy Corner by subscribing to my weekly newsletter. That's what I like to call it, is the Joy Corner. And like I said, go to that'sjoypodcast.com or head to the link in the show notes, and I'll have that directly in there for you. If you're not following me on social yet, you should do that. You can follow me at CCALBONERO on Instagram and on TikTok. You can follow That's Joy the Podcast on there too. Friends, I'll never leave an episode without saying, if you have even the smallest desire to meet the creator of the universe, or if you've already been saved but you're not really free, I want to invite you to sit at the table of plenty with me and so many others. I'm telling you, there's abundance here. There's overflow here. There's so much joy here. I'm here to tell you that God is for you. All you have to do is invite him into your heart right now. He's waiting for you. He wants to meet with you. And friends, I'm so proud of you. If you just made this decision, I'd love to know you. Shoot me a text to the number in the show notes so I could pray for you. I love you. God loves you. And until next time, I'll talk to y'all next time. Thank you so much for being here.